All right, today on the Blood Money podcast, we have General Michael Flynn and Boone Cutler speaking about fifth generation warfare and the destruction of the American family. Listen in today as they tell us all the treason happening within our country and what we must do to fight back. Welcome to the Blood Money podcast. Thank you so much, General Flynn, for coming on our Blood Money podcast. We had Boone Cutler a couple of days ago, and the topic of conversation was fifth generation warfare. And the book that you put together regarding that topic, with everything that's going on in our country, it's obvious that people need to know what fifth generation warfare is, because it's not something that you see and smell. It's something that you certainly feel. Do you want to dive right into it, General Flynn, in terms of what compelled you to work with Boone Cutler to put this book together?
Yeah, I mean, I first of all appreciate you allowing us to come on here and talk about the both Citizens Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare, Session 1, and then Session 2, which is even more critical these days, is Citizens Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare: How to Fight Artificial Intelligence. You know, both of these books are like these ought to be like field manuals for everyday American patriots, right? How to understand, how to operate, and really how to get along, how to unify within the context of everything that we're facing in the country today, and frankly globally. But how we got kind of started, where Boone and I were just literally talking one day in a hallway, and he was crafting some ideas about some of the things that we were involved in terms of just, when we got talking about everything. We got talking about our backgrounds, our the world of intelligence and information, the world of psychological operations. And we finally just sort of, the light went on. We went, hey, we ought to put all this into a book, take our backgrounds, our experiences, our life's lessons, and let's craft this thing. And it turned into this right here, the Citizens Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare, 5GW, an introduction to 5GW. And in it, the crazy thing, the thing that I always like to tell people is that when have you ever bought a book that you were going to actually, to enjoy to read, one, to learn something, but also had exams at the end of every chapter, right? So one of the cool things about this is that we try to take each reader through a series of lessons and then make them, basically cognitively think about what they just learned by answering questions in an end of chapter exam, right? It's not one that's, there's not a lot of pressure on you, but what we're trying to do is get people to really comprehend what it is that we are, what we believe we are facing right now. And I tell people, and I keep saying this, that we're in World War III right now, and there are physical components to it. I mean, obviously everything going on over in Europe and the Middle East, and frankly, right here in the streets of America, as we see, these Palestinian, pro-Palestinian riots breaking out around the country, cops getting beat up left and right, flags being torn down. I mean, it's crazy. That's a physical component right here on the streets of America. Never mind the rise of crime and such. But then you also have the other two parts that are somewhat combined, and that's the sort of emotional and intellectual. The emotional and intellectual, and what we try to do is to pull people away from the emotional side and give them a more of an intellectual understanding of what it is, so they can have a better argument. They can have a better discussion with their neighbors, their friends, and the people around them in their communities, their churches, wherever they're going to have discussions about what's happening. Because so many people get so emotional about this instead of really thinking through about as to what it is. And then the other thing it's very clear to me, and that's the spiritual component to this, to everything that we're facing. I speaking for myself, I firmly believe that this is a period of sort of good versus evil, and you can put it into the context of sort of godless societies and God-based societies or faith-based societies. America is a faith-based society. Our entire culture is based on, biblical principles and biblical values. And you have other societies globally, but also inside of the United States, for example, like societies that are based on communism, right? Based on other forms of ideologies that do not have faith and a strength of faith at its very center. That's the spiritual component. And we do talk a little bit about that both in the introduction to 5GW, as well as the how to fight artificial intelligence. Those sort of four components, the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual components, are why I believe we are currently in World War III. World War III is not going to be like World War I or World War II, the Maginot Line in World War I, the trench warfare, and then World War II, tanks, planes, trains, automobiles, the very neat, cool movies that we all kind of grew up on about, the bridge over the River Kwai or stuff like that, right? I mean, it's not going to be those things that you see in the movies. This right now is it's more of an informational and psychological and mental component, war that we are involved in. But it clearly has, as I've already outlined, these other dimensions, and there is a physical dimension. That's the thing when we think war, that it's always about physical. It does affect, the emotion, the intellectual, and the spiritual. Definitely affects us physically, but it's not this physical battlefield that we think about when we think about war. So, that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's kind of where I'm at and how I think and how I see what is happening around us. And we can get into all the different eaches of those things, Zem, if you want. But I'll let Boone jump in and kind of give his diatribe as to what he, how he and I kind of joined together, and then where we're taking this, because this is not a place where we're just going to sort of stop. This is like a journey that we're all on together here. And 5GW is at the essence of what it is that we're facing.
Boone, I was going to ask you about, since we talked about the book on the last episode, we didn't talk a lot about the spiritual component that the general was just mentioning. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, there's absolutely a spiritual component, because people have, whatever you want to call it. You can say their spirit, you can say the way they see things, the way they feel things, their worldview, the spirituality as far as, what makes that person inside their gut, what makes them tick. And all that is an element that's involved in this, because like General Flynn said, some countries are based on communism. They don't seek the knowledge of a higher power. Their country, their state, that leader of that state, that country wants to be the ultimate power. So they don't want to share power. They don't want to have a belief in God. They don't want to have a belief in spirituality of any type. It's very much about what people can produce for the state. And this is an issue, because as you start seeing things in the United States, we're starting to see the same thing. It's about what people can produce for the state. We're starting to look at the people that we elect, and they're exalting themselves as ultimate rulers, and God be damned. It's not even part of the discussion anymore. And I'm not saying what people should believe and what they should not believe, but at least let it be part of the discussion. You can't demonize spirituality. You can't demonize the religious factors in the United States, because at the end of the day, that is what we are. We have started this country, regardless of what your beliefs are, they really was founded on Christian principles. And people can argue about that and how Christian one of our founders was and how Christian one of them was not, and so on and so forth. You can do all that. But if you line everything up, this is a foundation of our country, and we've built from there. And I think it's still a very, very important foundation, because if you look, by and large, Americans do believe in God. We want to believe in God. We have a spiritual aspect to our lives. And when you see the state stepping in and saying, okay, instead of consulting God, we want you to consult doctors. We want you to consult, the science, as they say. And then they make a religion out of the science, because they want to co-opt that whole spirituality that people feel, that they know it's innate to humans. It's just there. And I think this is the issue. And I think there's a lot of these things that happen when we're talking about nonlinear warfare. When you're talking about irregular warfare and how really consuming someone's mind on some aspects of it, and then you're going to have those times when there's going to be full-fledged little green guy battles that are happening. but the populace is always going to be affected, whether it's hybrid warfare, whether it's irregular warfare, what the Chinese are doing out there with us, the unrestricted warfare. All these things just kind of come together in what we call the fifth generation of war, because that's where we're at on this technological platform of the planet. And in this fifth generation of war, they're using technology much of the time. They're using influencers, what we used to call key communicators, to co-opt people, to get their audience, and then to change the mindset of their audience to support our adversaries' objectives. And you can't really take over the mind of our people to support the adversaries' objectives until you wipe out the things that they believe in. And in America, this is where our spirituality is. And that's why I don't think this is going to this isn't going to have a lot of longevity, because I don't think Americans, by and large, are willing to give up the spiritual aspect of their lives.
Totally. I've always wanted to ask the following question to gentlemen as knowledgeable as you two, because I certainly don't know the answer to this question, although I could guess, right? I look at our branches of a government, okay? We have this problem right now with fifth generation warfare, right? But we have branches of government that are supposed to stop this sort of infiltration. I mean, we saw this in the 1950s where, the ills of communism was taught to the children. It seems as though today they should be teaching your handbook in schools to prepare people. Well, in fact, they should have been teaching this a long time ago, right? But that hasn't happened. And then we have three branches of government that are supposed to protect our rights, keep away this nonsense from us, right? But what I see in those three branches of government is that there's no checks and balances anymore. It seems as though the judiciary does whatever they want. They're not holding people accountable. It seems as though a legislature that's supposed to hold the judiciary accountable is not doing their job. You have the judiciary that's filled with a lot of lawyers. You have the legislature that's 75% lawyers. And what I personally call bar agents. To me, that seems like a problem, because if you have no checks and balances, you can't fix these issues. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, starting with the General Flynn, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so your audience should know that we're built on a tricameral system of government, right? Executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. Just the basics of, how a bill becomes law, how budgets are made, and all those kinds of things. I think what has evolved over time, and I guess the one thing as I contemplate answering your question, I think the whole idea that we are human beings, right? And human beings are prone to, major weaknesses, massive failure. And so if we have people that are elected, let's just talk the elected side instead of just the bureaucratic side, the unelected. But if we just talk about the elected side, what we all see are those people that are elected. They get into office and they go there with some sort of set of ideals that they want to achieve. They get involved in politics at an early age, and they say, I'm going to go fix these problems, and we're broken, and I'm going to be the one that's going to save the day. And they get there, and this is primarily the legislative side, but some in the executive, but primarily the legislative side. And this is from county on up through federal government, the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. They get there with all of this, this vision of how they're going to make things better, and then they all of a sudden get trapped in the world of capitalism, I guess, if you could say it like that. If they get trapped in the world of where money and power meets, a human being who all of a sudden, on one hand was a really good person when they began, but then all of a sudden they find themselves getting a little bit too greedy. And that's the human being in the loop. That's the sort of the human in the loop. And so we have that problem. And when people stay in those offices, in those elected offices forever, we don't have term limits in Congress, right? We don't have term limits in the legislative branch. Now on the executive side is particularly, and I'm really talking at the federal level, but it happens at states too. So the things that I'm talking about happens at state level too, because, we talk about lobbyists, for example. Well, lobbyists are at states, they're within states, and lobbyists are within counties. I mean, trust me, if you got a couple of hospitals in a county you've got some insurance companies in a county. You've got an energy company in a county. Those people are going to be looking for, things that are going to benefit them. And so they put money towards these elected officials, whether they're on the legislative side or whether they're on the executive side, whether you're a mayor of a city, you're the county commissioner, and you're the head county commissioner, or you're the president of the United States. And then there's this ebb and flow of these people going back and forth in and out of government. And when they go back and forth in and out of government, the money continues to follow. That's why we use the phrase "follow the money." And typically, when people get into trouble, when elected officials and unelected officials, bureaucrats get into trouble, it's because of money. And what we typically do is you follow the money, you go to the direction that money takes you, and you see that somebody, a human being with, who's weak, generally weak, took the money and went off on a direction that they would have never gone on when they were, 25, 30 years old, first getting into government service. Because at that time they were still back in the realm of wanting to fix things, right? But when they get in there and they become long in the tooth, then they get so corrupt. And the level of corruption in our government right now is staggering. The sad thing for me is on the judiciary. And that's where again, and again, these are human beings. So they're not like, they're not robots, they're humans. But even judges in the judiciary, and what we have seen and what we have learned, right away when some case is going to be heard, right away everybody goes, well, who appointed the judge? Is it a Republican person that appointed him? Is it a Democrat? Is it Obama, Bush, Reagan? Who appointed the judge? Well, that shouldn't matter particularly to federal judges. It shouldn't matter. But yet we have federal judges who are spewing anti-American rhetoric on their social media sites, right? I mean, we see some of that. We see federal judges who have made public statements that affect their ability to be able to be an unbiased federal judge in a federal case because of their public comments that they say about, one person or one issue or the other. And you go back and you start to look at, well, where did they come from? Well, this guy used to be the principal staffer to the Republican majority on the Senate judiciary. And you go, oh, and now he's a federal judge, or she's a federal judge. Or it could be just the opposite on the Democrat side, right? It could be somebody that comes off the House Judiciary Committee, was the senior staffer on the House Judiciary when the House was run by a Democrat, and now that person gets selected to be a federal judge. Well, all you got to do is go back to what they believed when they were in those jobs, and you go, okay, now I understand why they're making the decisions that they're making. Yeah. Judges hate to be overturned. Okay, they hate to be overturned. And that's why we have this system, because even in the judiciary, there's a system of checks and balances, right? All the way on up to the Supreme Court. So they can check and balance themselves. So if judges, if one judge goes overboard, there's an appeals process. If the appeals court goes overboard, there's another appeal to the highest authority in our judiciary, which is the United States Supreme Court. Even the Supreme Court has been, guilty at times of I think, of showing, a level of biasness that is not always pro-Constitution. So, I guess my bottom line answer on all of that is that people are human beings, and they will get corrupted by power and money. And because you keep saying, people always ask me, Zem, why do these people want to do what they're doing? Chris, they already have all kinds of money. They already got all kinds of power. They're already super wealthy. They're in some powerful position. What is it that I'm missing? Well, what you're missing is that they want more power and they want more money, because that's how evil corrupts. It basically it's a continuation, and it just grows and grows and grows until you say to yourself, God, where does this end? And that's where America is today. So for your audience, for me personally, we're at a place where we've kind of gone, enough is enough. And the level of corruption in our government is so utterly out of control, and there just feels like there's no accountability. unless you're on one side of that, right? Unless you're like Mike Flynn or Donald Trump, right? If you're one of those two people or people in that inner circle, then they're going to come after you. Why? And why now? Why just those couple of names? Because that's who's in charge right now, right? That's who's in charge. When the Republicans are in charge, sometimes Republicans do this. Look at what they did to Bill Clinton and the Ken Starr, right? For having sex with a woman in the Oval Office, right? I mean, I guarantee that's probably not the first time that's happened. So anyway, I mean, it ebbs and flows. And I'll shut up in a second here. But where we are today, Zem, is we're in a different place. We're not in the 90s. We're not even in the last decade. We're in a new place. Going forward, we are in a place where we are going to shift the very essence of what the United States of America was designed to be, which was a constitutional republic and an experiment in democracy. Okay? We are shifting right now. And we are shifting to something, and I've said it, a couple of times, I've written about it too, that we are shifting to more of what I would, what you could call, because some people have made the analogy, we are shifting to something called the United Socialist States of America, right? Just like we had the USSR, we could potentially have the USSA here, right? Yeah. And basically a deconstruction of the Constitution by those in power who take away rights, who censor us, who attack us through their means of lawfare, right? And we turn into a socialist country called the United Socialist States of America, because there are a group of people, a larger group of people than most know, most want to accept, that are socialists inside of the United States government, running and holding on to and controlling levers of power in our very own government.
Yeah. Boone, I have a follow-up question for you, but I must ask a question, General Flynn, because I've always wanted to ask this question of somebody of your stature. Are you aware of what the family law courts have been doing to families out there? And the reason I mention that question is because we've covered that issue quite a bit on the Blood Money podcast. And what occurred to me when the system started going after Donald Trump is that a lot of the similar techniques were used that you see in family law courts to remove fathers from families. It seems to have gone to epidemic proportions at this point, where the courts seem to be intent on breaking up the American family, based upon my opinion. I would love to hear your thoughts on that topic, sir.
Yeah, the single biggest problem we have in the United States of America is the breakdown of the family, period. And that started 40, 50 years ago. The breakdown of the family, the loss of a father in the home, and particularly in the African-American community, but it happens across the board. It happens across the board. It's not just in, the Black community, it's in the white community, it's in the Hispanic community, but the breakdown of the family, and then the way that like you're talking about with family courts, the way that family courts have put themselves in between and divided. And I'm being a little bit, kind of in general, because I don't have any specific data points off the top of my head on this issue. But the dividing up of families, into categories. Now, if there's a need to take a child out of a home because it's where the child's being, physically or sexually abused, I can understand that. People go through divorces. I can understand that. But the idea that we have of systematically going after the family unit as something that is not necessary for the health of a society, okay? That's what the, in this case, that's what the left has done, okay? The conservatives in this country believe in sort of pro-family. I wouldn't say that liberals don't believe in pro-family. There's, I consider myself a bit of a liberal, in many areas. I'm very pro-family, very pro-family. But there is an element that is not pro-family, because the structure of the family provides strength to the society, okay? And if you have a healthy society, you're probably not going to have communism in that society, right? You're probably going to have a weak, or you're going to want a weaker society that you can control as a as a society rather than allowing individuals to have their, to demonstrate their own freedoms. So the family courts, I think, I'll tell you, if Donald Trump's kids were younger, if they were preteen or teenagers, not adults, we would probably hear people talking about taking his kids away from him because he's this crazed guy. He's not, but that's what's happened by the way people have been treated by lawfare, by courts, by the media, the whole gamut. And is it going to stop? I'm not foolish to think it's going to stop, Zem. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. People need to get off that mantra. Well, it needs to stop. This is not going to stop. This is going to continue to be the warfare that we are facing, like it or not. So what you have to do is you have to get your arguments better. You have to strengthen your arguments because it is, and I always use this phrase, 2% of the passionate will defeat 98% of the indifferent 100% of the time. We're only facing 2%, maybe 3% of the passionate out there that are trying to change, a society when it really comes down to it. And most people in America are indifferent. Most people in America are indifferent, meaning like, I don't do that politics thing. I'm not going to get involved. I got my little community here. I got my little place here. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And I'm not going to bother anybody. I don't want anybody to bother me. Well, guess what? In time, you're going to feel bothered because if you don't do something, if you don't get involved in your communities, this is my big thing is this local action stuff. You don't get involved in your communities, then you're screwed, and you're screwing the rest of us. You're screwing those people that are saying, hey, look, I'm trying to protect the rights of this country, right? Boone and I served in the armed forces, right? We were over there. Hell, he almost did die, right? I mean, probably near death, if not, went through a near death experience. So we are people that are willing to sacrifice our lives for other people. All I'm asking people to do is sacrifice a little bit of time to go and get involved in your community.
Totally. Boone, I have to ask you. So we were talking earlier about lobbyists and the effects they have on policy on politicians, right? I ran for office in 2022, and what I realized really horrified me, that you have to kiss certain rings to even win an office most of the time, right? And you have to adopt certain policies. So by the time you get in there, you might be running on, pure ideas, but by the time you actually win, you're already corrupted. Now, in my opinion, I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. The concept of a lobbyist, right? If you need to raise $3 to $5 million to win a seat, that's $200,000 already your own. And that concept on its own seems like backdoor communism to me, giving power to an elite as opposed to we the people. What do you say about that?
Well, I'm going to tie that into a question you asked before, because I think they go together. When you said, what is the government doing to fight against fifth generation warfare specifically? Well, this is an issue, and I think it ties into what you're talking about, because what you're talking about is that corporatocracy. You're talking about, who can you get as a sponsor to get you into office, and do you need a lobbyist, and where do you get the money from to run for office? All these people. There's an old joke, we wish politicians was like NASCAR so we could see who their sponsors are. They could just wear all the stickers. And I think that's a factor. But what is driving all this? Because in the United States, if it is true, we do have a corporatocracy, meaning the corporations influence government. Well, what happens when our corporations are foreign influenced? Now our foreign influenced corporations are influencing our government, meaning now our government is foreign influenced. And who do they want? Who do these foreign powers? Who do they want in office that they're going to back through these corporations? This is an issue. This has to be cleaned up. And I think one of the issues that we have to clean up at the same time is understanding the messaging side. So that's the physical representation of who these people are trying to put into office. But how are they doing it? What techniques are they using? It's not just money. It's also information. It's all the things that you're seeing coming across your feed all the time. Who's controlling the feed? Because this is a big deal. This is a huge issue. Who's controlling the feed? Usually it's a tech company, and the tech company is using technology that's being forwarded or being routed back to the CCP that's being curated into these data sets to train artificial intelligence to control people. Now, where is all this getting? How does this all come together? It comes together in the concept of what is the country doing to fight fifth generation warfare? What is the government doing? Well, when we have these levers of power out there that are supposed to control, we have these cabinet level positions that are supposed to support our levels of power, levers of power. And at the same time, we're supposed to attack or deplete or disrupt other countries that are our adversaries, disrupt their levers of power. Well, here's the big problem. When you look at all those cabinet level positions, who's the guy, who's the person, what's the position that says, hey, there's information or artificial intelligence programs that are being launched inside the United States to affect our populace? We need to keep that out of our space, our cognitive space, our internet space, because the freedom of speech in America protects Americans. Okay, and in many instances, our legal residents that are here living legally from other countries. That's who it protects. It does not protect, freedom of speech does not protect someone in someone in China, someone in Pakistan, someone in Iran, someone someplace else who's trying to launch AI systems into the United States. That is not protected under freedom of speech, and that should be blocked. Those things are weapons. Those are weapons being deployed within the United States to attack the cognitive battle space of our American populace. That should be controlled. Equally, all the information that is put into the United States that is about freedom, people need to see people in the United States being free. The people of China need to see Americans being free, being able to have the ability to speak against their government without fear of reprisal. So the world needs to see that, but that's the outbound. The inbound, no, I think there's a tremendous amount of work that is done on these systems to make sure people are, come on, let's face it. This morning, my wife and I were talking about redoing the bathroom, and she was mentioning I should go eat some potatoes so I could fill my stomach and not eat too many calories. She literally pulls up her Instagram after that, and the first thing she sees is an advertisement for remodeling a bathroom, and the next thing she sees is a recipe for potatoes.
Wow.
Okay, these are AI systems that are listening to you. Well, they're not just listening to send you an ad. They're listening to you to identify where you're at cognitively. What are your beliefs? So they can start interceding your beliefs with information that is put in front of you all the time. Who's controlling that? Well, the sad part about it is there's nobody in our government controlling that. We're just now starting to react to it. If you read the back, in session 2, we put in the legislation there that controls all this. We just need to get that sponsored, put out there. But every American needs to read this legislation because this is what protects us, our right to free speech, and also protects us from these AI sinister systems that are controlling our people. This is where the real fight is. And how do we do that? Well, we can do that. It has to be done. But there also should be some sort of cabinet level position that is in charge of this. Right now, the military is looking to, our government is looking to the military to intercede messaging that happens on the internet and then countering it in real time. I think that's great. I think that's fine and dandy as long as it's a foreign-born AI system. It's foreign-born messaging trying to change our populace. But where is the check and balance? Say we have a current president who goes, you know what, I don't like that MAGA stuff. Let's start shutting that down. Well, if that's organic to the United States, that should not be shut down because that's the will of the people. That's the voice of the people. But the stuff that's coming in externally from foreign powers, that should absolutely be stopped.
Yeah. I mean, it seems as though like all these corporations that were essentially brought up in the United States have now become really greedy and turned their back on us. And it seems like they're really chasing the communist Chinese money. I mean, General Flynn, what do you say about that?
You know, it's not chasing Chinese money because the Chinese, it's not like they have a lot of money. It's basically, it's allowing China and frankly, other countries on the planet to do the things that the United States of America always did so well, right? And that's in many cases, that's just manufacturing stuff, right? And the AI component of it, I'll get to here in a second. But if we are buying, like you look in your house, you look at whatever you're wearing. I mean, anything around you, telephones, the TV that we're talking through, the desk that I'm standing on top of. I mean, everything is like made somewhere other than the United States of America. It might be assembled in the United States, maybe, but in some cases, if it's assembled in the United States, it's probably, you go to like some of these plants that they have down. I was over at one or near one recently in Alabama, and it's an assembly plant for cars, and most of the employees are imported in. They're imported in. So, they don't even hire that many people from around the sort of the neighboring towns, right? So the cost of labor in China is nothing. It's next to nothing. So whereas the cost of labor in the United States of America is obviously going to be higher, but the product and the quality are going to be higher. And that's why we want to have America-made, created products, right? I mean, they're just better. They always have been better. Every single thing that was ever created in the United States of America in terms of a product was always better. What we allowed to have happen was we allowed to have these big corporations send all of their, all their requirements over to a slave state, principally China, but there's other countries over there. There's, the countries of Southeast Asia, the Philippines, that are cheap labor, but principally China, right? Made in China. Everything's made in China. So it's not chasing the money. It's actually making money because of benefiting off of something that we allowed them to do. And this is where, the sort of the 60,000 foot strategic level comes in, where, when you're talking about trade agreements, right? And negotiating between nation states to be able to benefit the security, the safety of the citizens of the United States of America, right? I mean, you can't have, your cake and eat it too if you're an American citizen, but you allow China to make every single damn thing we have, to include pieces and parts of our defense industry, okay? That's how stupid we can be, Zem. So on the other hand, though, people in this country have to, and we've sort of developed a culture of not just say laziness, right? I mean, I'm in Florida. I'm in the state of Florida. To find people down here, to find labor, to find workers, to find trade skilled workers like electricians, plumbers, air conditioning, people that know how to do air conditioning systems down here, painters, all of the skilled type of labor that requires, something where you're going to get your hands dirty. It's so hard to find. Yet if you have those skills and you come down here, you can actually do very decent. You can make a good living down here with just those skills. But we just don't have enough of them because our system and our society just hasn't created them. We have that same problem in the United States military. We've lost a lot of trust between the military and the American people. But we also have a society of young people who they're not even fit enough to be able to join the U.S. military. And frankly, we don't have the numbers anymore, even though we need them. And we're down in the Army. We're going to probably have a second year of not meeting recruiting. That's not good for the world superpower, right?
Wow. How much of this problem, and this question is for Boone, how much of this problem stems from European powers? Meaning, we've seen how, multiculturalism, what it's done to Europe, what it's done to England. We've seen the influence of England still upon us, being like, for example, Prince Charles announcing Build Back Better, Prince Charles announcing the whole COVID situation. It seems as though there's definitely a European agenda on all of this that has taken us down the same road as Europe went down. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, you got to ask yourself who's controlling Europe and who's controlling the messaging in the United States. I mean, you're talking about centralized messaging. It's just going out through different venues, but it's the same message. So who's doing that? I would again look right back to the CCP, and I would look right back to, because it's their centralized messaging. Look at the World Health Organization, look at the World Economic Forum, look at all this stuff. They're very, very coordinated. They get together and they figure how they're going to roll out a mission, a message, a campaign. These are all campaigns in the PSYOP community. It's not really trickery. It's all a series of campaigns. You just nudge people into position, one campaign after another. And that's what you're seeing. So who's writing the PSYOP campaign? That's what you got to figure out. and you're going to find out those answers right in here, and you're going to be a lot smarter. I love podcasts. I love going on shows. I love going on radio shows. I know General Flynn does too. We do a lot of them. But at the same time, people out there, listen to me. You're not going to get all the information you need to get by watching a podcast. We cannot put all the information you need to know about fifth generation warfare on a meme. It's not going to fit. It doesn't work. You're going to have to educate yourselves. And the way you educate yourself is by getting something just like this, getting this right here. It's a military-style manual written for civilians. The average 19-year-old working at Home Depot can understand it. And this is where we need to go. This is what we need to do to get on the same sheet of music, because we don't have a voice if we don't speak the same language. We've got to speak the same language with the same terms, the same understanding, and then we can get somewhere. We have to have continuity of message before we can have continuity of action.
Totally.
And let me jump on one thing, because he just brought up something I think is really critical, and we talk about it in the introduction to 5GW. And there's actually 4 phases. I won't address the 4th phase, but there's 3 phases that we are currently either inside of each one, or we are already at the sort of the 3rd phase, which is the dehumanization. Right? We have polarization, tribalization, dehumanization. Right? Those are the first 3 phases of a 4-phase effort to really, I think, to destroy a society. So, you polarize the society, you tribalize, meaning the left, the right, this, the that. And then you dehumanize. You dehumanize people, you dehumanize groups of people, right? I mean, the MAGA cult, calling the Make America Great people, or calling anybody that wears a Make America Great hat, as an example, calling them a cult, that is to dehumanize that organization. To call me a Russian traitor or a Russian spy, that is to dehumanize me in the eyes of others, right? And maybe to cause me to also think less of myself, right? I mean, you can dehumanize groups and you can dehumanize individuals. That's the 3rd phase. The 4th phase is in the book. I won't address it here, but it's a really dangerous place for us to be, because we have already seen elements of each one of the first 3. Polarization is very clear. Tribalization, breaking us up into different camps, right? Into these different camps. And the media does a really good job of this. Your question to Boone was an interesting one, because, if you have King Charles talking about Build Back Better, well, I thought that was Joe Biden's bumper sticker for his campaign, but it really isn't. It is a globalist phrase, it's phraseology that the globalists use. And I always say that Build Back Better means destroy everything and then build it back better in their image. But before you do that, you have to polarize people on issues. You then have to tribalize them and break them up into groups. And you have to go after those groups that are going to support you and really hone in on them to make sure that you're going to have the support that you need when you need it. And you're going to have to go after those. When you tribalize, you're going to have to go after those groups like J6ers, right? J6ers are tribalized out. They're just a bunch of thugs. That's what they want us to believe, that these people were creating insurrection on January 6th back in 2021. And then what you do is you dehumanize, right? You dehumanize them. You dehumanize as a group, as individuals. You dehumanize the guy running for president of the United States who was a president of the United States. You dehumanize people like me, high-profile people. You make them seem to so many people less than who they truly are by calling them names, by trying to define them, through your terms and through the tribes that you've created. Those 3 phases are critical. We go through each one of those phases, and then the 4th phase in great detail in the introduction to 5GW. And the end goal, if you're able to achieve all those and go through to the final phase, is not a positive ending. It's not a positive ending if you are on the side of evil. Okay, if you're part of that tribe of evil, right? Because there's a tribe of evil. There's definitely. I mean, they've tribalized themselves. They've clearly shown who they are. And like I said earlier, 2%, 3%, it's not that large of a percentage, but they have a large voice, and they have the mechanisms in place because they hold on right now desperately to levers of power in our own government, in the United States of America. And then, of course, the globalist side also has levers of power that they hang on to, and like a lot of things people don't know. Like when I mention the World Health Organization, I'll say World Health Organization, right? World Health Organization is a private organization. It's not a governmental organization. It's private. The World Bank, private, right? I mean, these are private organizations. They appoint people into these, and you kind of go, who's they? Who's appointing the head of the World Health Organization? Is it somebody in the World Economic Forum? Is it some other group of elites? These are not accountable organizations to governments. These are private organizations. The majority of I can tell you, 99.9% of Americans, they don't have a clue what I just said. I mean, now they might through your show, but they think that the World Health Organization is some European body that belongs to some European Union country. Maybe they think that. Maybe most people don't even know. Maybe they don't care. But what they're doing to us here in America is staggering. It's staggering in terms of the vast amount of change that they are making in the United States of America through decisions being taken by people who are appointed into jobs, into private corporations, private companies, private health organizations that have no accountability to anybody. That's not what America is built upon. Our system of government, our way of life, back to the very beginning of your show, asking about the three branches of government, we're built on checks and balances, but most of all, we're built on a rule of law. That's the pinnacle. That is the pinnacle of who we are as Americans, is we have a rule of law system where we are held accountable on an equal basis based on the laws of our land. And right now, I don't feel like we're demonstrating that to ourselves, and definitely not to the rest of the world.
I mean, and gentlemen, whoever wants to answer this question, I mean, are we to be hopeful of what's to come? I mean, in brutal honesty, are you hopeful about the future of this country? Boone, if you want to answer that first, and then General Flynn, please.
I'm hopeful about the future of this country, but I am very pessimistic on the timeline, because I don't think people always fight back against tyranny at some point. They just do. It happens over and over and over and over again. It happens. It is the way things will end up. The question is, how fast can you get people educated? How smart can you get them quickly so they can identify what's coming? And also let people know. I think they know, they just want to ignore it, because when people become confused, they do nothing. Okay, this is a fact. When they're confused, they do nothing. They just sit and they do the same thing they've been doing. They try and ignore it and say, well, that's not me. But all the things that are happening around our country to different people, and people, if you're sitting there right now saying, well, that's not me, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and that's those people, I got news for you. Sooner or later, that's going to be you. You're going to be sitting in that same place. It happens over and over again through history. And then what are you going to do? Because you've let it manifest to the point that it got to your front door. So if you're going to let that continue to manifest till you get to your front door, you're just as much to blame as the people that are doing the wrongs. So I'm very optimistic that our country will overcome these things. However, I'm pessimistic about the timeline, because pain is personal. And right now there's a lot of people that, A, they're either not feeling enough pain, so they're not taking action. B, they're confused, so they don't know what to do, so they don't take action. Or the last of which is, hey, they're jumping on board, they're going to be a part of this. And it's a small group. There's a lot of astroturfing that's happening with this entire movement. If you know what a grassroots movement is, that's where the populace organically stands up and they push for change. But that's not what you're seeing. All the stuff that you're seeing right now is truly astroturfing. It's fake. It's a small group that's standing up, that's getting a lot of attention and getting a lot of support from the media to make it look like that's the big group, that's the majority audience. And it's not. And we know it's not the majority audience because they can't replicate it in the physical domain. They can only replicate it through the digital space, which is contrived and controlled. In the physical domain, you don't see communist rallies out there. That's not happening. And if you did see one, it damn sure wouldn't be as big as any Donald Trump rally. It wouldn't exist. Okay, so we understand that the majority of people believe just like we're believing right now, but they don't have a voice because they're in the digital space. They've got to get into the physical domain. We must come together as groups in the physical domain and decide to take action locally so we can start changing things from the bottom to the top.
General.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that's so right what Boone just laid out. If you think about success, let's just talk about success. Success as an individual, success as a society is no accident. Okay, success doesn't just come because somebody sprinkles fairy dust on you and poof, you're successful. Even people who have a sugar daddy, who are born into wealth, they don't maintain that wealth, without going and doing something about it, right? But people that that are very successful people, nations like the United States of America, that is essentially still a very successful nation so far. We are in that ebb and flow of history right now, though, as we've been talking about these last hour. But it requires perseverance. It requires discipline. It requires training. It requires studying. It requires a persistence in your life, getting up every day and going and reading and going and understanding and engaging. To be successful requires sacrifice. To be successful as an individual requires sacrifice. To be successful as a society requires sacrifice. Our society has been successful over I think 247 years now because of, look at how many lives have been lost, right? Look at how many lives have been damaged or transformed, not in a necessarily positive way, because they have sacrificed almost everything to stand up for something that's greater than they are, right? And now I'm really talking about the men and women in uniform that have given their lives from the very beginning, the very foundations of this country, all the way through till even now. We have men and women overseas being engaged by enemies, right? Sacrificing, showing a sense of discipline, showing a sense of love. And I think that's what we have to understand, that we can have that as individuals, but in order to have it as a society, we have got to come together and understand that as a society, for the United States of America to continue on in this experiment in democracy, as a constitutional republic with a sound, strong set of rules and laws, we're going to have to sacrifice. That's the only way that we're going to get to where we need to be. And I totally agree with Boone. I'm not pessimistic on the timeline. I'm not optimistic. I'm sorry. I'm not optimistic on the timeline. I don't think that another election is going to do it. I just don't see that. I mean, whether or not we have an election or whether the election is fair, right? I mean, I can see scenarios of each and other scenarios. That's kind of my thing, right? And when I look at the way the world is, and I look at, how is it that we got to where we got, almost 250 years now, right? With this great experiment. And the reason why we got here is because of great sacrifice. That's the only reason. And so my sort of going away point is that in order for us to maintain and to continue to be successful as a nation, we are going to require much greater sacrifice in the weeks, months, and years ahead.
Hey, brother, let me jump in there because I think we got a teachable moment. General Flynn is talking about all this stuff, and he's talking about things not from the perspective of something you read in a book, and excuse me, I don't mean to embarrass you at all, General Flynn, but I got to say this stuff because I think it's such a teachable moment. When you talk about work, hard work, you talk about love, you talk about discipline. I see these things all the time because I see it through General Flynn. I work with a lot of the same people he works with. We work together on the books and doing shows and things like that. He's very, very gracious with his time and with his work and with his effort. But I also know that the man's day starts at 5:30. I don't mean getting up at 5:30. I mean his work day starts at 5:30. I know because he's texting me, and that's when everything happens, So he's working at 5:30, and I know I'm texting. I'm a night owl, so I'm texting him at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and he's responding. I don't know when the man sleeps. Somebody asked me if he was today's Smedley Butler, and I said no, he's more like John Wick. General Flynn is an intellectual John Wick. He's out there really doing so many things and putting things into play and working very, very hard. And this is not necessarily for pay or for money or for fame or for fortune, but because that's his mission. It is a mission-driven life. And believe me, it starts early and it goes late every single day. I can't imagine what the man's frequent flyer miles are. So when we look around us as Americans, we've got to be able to put together some sort of an emoticon of that type of effort, of that type of actual pushing to make things happen. And it does fall in the framework of discipline, of love, and hard work. I think that's really the framework. And if we just do that, I think I can be more optimistic about the timeline. But until we do that, I'm very pessimistic about the timeline, but I do believe it will happen one day. You got no sound, brother.
Sorry, I put myself on mute because it was echoing a little bit. Very short last question for each one of you gentlemen. So, General Flynn, I've had this gut instinct that I believe and I could be totally wrong here, I believe you're going to be Trump's VP pick. What do you think about that question?
It's one of those things where I've been asked that before by him in the 2016 campaign. Mm-hmm. So I'll have to wait till that time comes, and you make those decisions when they come. But because I've been in that position before, it's a real honor, and we'll see.
Cool. Yeah, I told Boone this little story earlier, just real quickly. I remember one time at the Reawaken Festival, you were passing by me, you nodded, and I felt so terrible, but I called you, sir, by your first name, and I had to psychoanalyze why I did that, and because that's not the sort of thing I do. I have such tremendous respect for you, sir, and I think there's something about you, sir, that almost a readiness quality, the patriarch that we've been missing in this country, and a balanced approach. And you're one of the most gracious individuals I've met. I've seen you talk for hours with regular individuals at the Reawaken Festival. So, for what that's worth, thank you for all that you're doing. And I sincerely apologize for calling you by your first name.
Oh my God, that's fine. No, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And Boone, last question. Henry Kissinger just died. Any comments?
Things change. That's my biggest comment. People are going to review his life, and they're going to say, he fell on this side, he fell on this side, he made decisions this way, he made decisions that way. Let's see how that fares out. He lived his life for his time, with his background, with his objectives, and I think everybody should kind of be looking at those and saying, okay, on one frame of references, they made decisions for that time. Would those same decisions be made today? Probably not. Probably definitely not. And I think there's plenty of things we can second guess, and I think there's quite a few things we can also look at and go, why did he do that? And how did we benefit from it? I think it's definitely worth review, and I look forward to more and more of those discussions, because we're all going to go through it. We're all going to die one day. And people are going to second guess some things, and some people are going to really, exalt us for some things we've done, and they're going to kick us right in the balls for the other things we've done. And nobody's immune from that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for showing up to this Blood Money podcast. Is there any last words either of you who want to say?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Zem.
Thank you. And for the viewers out there, make sure you buy this book. We're going to have a link below. Definitely, I've read it myself. It is a fantastic book. It is a book that they need to be teaching all the children out there and the adults. Fifth Generation Warfare by General Michael Flynn and Boone Cutler. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Blood Money, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.
Welcome to Unfuck Your Mind News with Mr. Disco Ballhead. Every week on Unfuck Your Mind News, we get to see what so many batshit crazy Earthlings have been up to. Self-destructive Earthlings, commie and woke crazies, angry white females, beta soy boys. Today's woke wankers with Mr. Disco Ballhead. This is Unfuck Your Mind News. In this week's Unfuck Your Mind News, we visit Clark County of the Satanic City of Las Vegas, where an activist that is trying to save the penises of young boy Earthling children from the scissors of crazy femalist liberatus had this to say.
Why are we telling little boys that they can be girls and girls they can be boys when they can't? Because actually, that's when these kids tend to have the highest suicide rate, is after they do all this surgery. Instead, they get used like a little Gucci bag, so their mom gets attention, and they get to say that their child's trans, and none of it is based in science. It's all based in liberal ideology. And these statistics represent two-parent households. The single mother households are where these violent, crazy kids are coming from.
Of course, all the honesty and statistics made the communists go nuts.
Send her out. Send her out.
Statistically speaking,
Your mama, bitch.
single parent
All right, if you are not leaving, we're going to ask you to leave.
Unfortunately, this made a very large black woman lose her mind.
Bring your ass outside.
Are you violent?
Bring your ass outside.
Are you telling me you're
You always got shit
Another mother was recently attacked by a large white woman, a teacher in the satanic city of Las Vegas.
I don't love Nazis. Go fuck yourself.
There you go. And that is the teacher that's teaching your kids.
And I don't give you consent to record me. You don't have consent to record
I don't
me.
need consent.
This begs the question, why do Earthlings give their children to the sacrifice of mentally unstable communists who hate freedom of speech and facts? From our observations from Planet Disco Ball Head, when you replace a black father with an angry large black woman, this happens. And this happens. And this happens.
OG, come on, stay with me, OG. OG, stay with me.
But while this brave and smart young woman with the unusual color hair is defending the truth and honor of men, where are the men? It is clear that the Earthling men are suffering from Positus complexus. In other news, it is clear that the Earthling people like killing their babies. And the people of Hamas are killing the babies of Israel. And the bombs of Israel are killing the babies of Gaza. And the Christian peoples of America are wanting to kill the Palestinian babies so that all the Jews, who they say are their friends, could all go to Israel, so most of them could be blown up and killed as well, so that God comes back. Anyway, in other news, it seems as though this young man who's dressed like a girl seems to be having some problems because his rights are being violated. Let's watch some video he put together about this issue.
He's having a nice feast.
She, her.
Okay.
I use she, her pronouns. I'm not sir.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
sir?
Not.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
I don't need to be called ma'am. I just need to not be called sir, you know?
Could we please find another planet? I'm depressed. I can't sleep. I'm getting fat. The water here is making me grow tits. I need to get the out of here. The man playing Joe Biden of Communist America has stated his desire to start World War III with his girly army. All while, the borders of America have been open, letting in millions of military-age men. Michael Yon has stated, "They are here to kill you and take your homes." By the way, you have my ship ready, right? For when these Earthlings go crazy? It's all fueled up so we get the fuck out of here? Michael Yon was very frustrated in his interview with America Happens. He had this to say.
For instance, that we're going into race wars. That's crystal clear in my paradigm, right? But it takes guts to say that because people don't want to be called a racist.
Earthlings, I know this information you hear on America Happens must be a little shocking. Are there evil people out there that want to cut off the penises and breasts of your children? Unfortunately, yes. Have many of these evil people taken over your courts and schools? Unfortunately, yes. Are they spraying your skies with chemicals and trying to kill you? Unfortunately, yes. Are they trying to inject you with things that will kill you? Unfortunately, yes. Will a nuclear bomb go off in the world before the 2024 election? Most likely, yes. But look at the bright side, Earthlings. What is important to remember, at least I don't live on this planet. R2D2, let's get the f*** out of here. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mr. Disco Ball Head presents Unfuck Your Mind News.